For many years before the arrival of the white man, the natives of Awendoke, the Wendat, later named the Hurons, and those before them used the aboriginal trails along the portage that once existed between Lake Simcoe and the Nottawasaga River as a route to Lake Huron. Sir Captain John Franklin came over the 9-mile portage in 1825. It was April, and even with the help of David Soles and his oxen from Big Bay Point, the great explorer traveled a grueling route through here to reach his destination of Penetang-Washeen. It is exciting to think of the hundreds, perhaps thousands of native families who over the years paused to rest at this location and establish the site now occupied by Allandale Station as a true people place. From Holland Landing, natives and immigrants traveled north. From 1812 and 1815, sloops and schooners were doing business on Lake Simcoe, and in 1832, a steamboat service was inaugurated. Alive with crafts of all kinds was the Barrie waterfront, this day long ago when this picture was made, on a glass negative. This is the Geneva, leaving the wharf of Barrie. She steamed up and down the lake until decrepit. In the early days of the Northern Railway, 2 paddle wheelers, the Ida Burton and Lady of the Lake, carried mail, freight, and passengers to all Lake Simcoe and Muskoka ports. The girl behind the ship, Ida Burton of Barrie, attractive daughter of the ship's builder. The government depot was located north of Memorial Square, and settlers began to stay. In 1833, the government of Upper Canada ordered 45 acres developed into town lots. This settlement took the name of Barrie after Commodore Barrie, who was Commodore of the inactive fleet entrusted to defend the upper Great Lakes. In 1843, Barrie was designated as the county seat for the redefined County of Simcoe. 4 years later, the community petitioned the Legislative Assembly seeking a subvention for railway connections with both Toronto and Georgian Bay, a railway that would link the Grand Portage, Lake Huron, and Lake Ontario to Georgian Bay. Mayor William Allen of Toronto headed the list of 1,100 petitioners. The cost of 110 miles of railway to the still unchosen Georgian Bay terminus was estimated at $1.25 million. In November 1851, the sod turning of the Ontario Simcoe and Huron Railway was accomplished in Toronto by Lady Elgin, wife of the Governor-General. Built through Bradford, the Ontario Simcoe and Huron Railway, nicknamed the Oats, Straw and Hay, reached the Kempenfelt Bay terminus about 1 mile southwest of Barrie in 1853. The station was named Allandale after Mayor Allen. The line pushed north to Collingwood and was completed in 1855. After a great deal of dissension and controversy, the line was continued into Barrie on June 21st, 1865, and the town had a station of its own. Barrie was incorporated in 1853. In the same year, the work engine, Lady Elgin, engine number 1, made it into Allandale. This was the first locomotive into Simcoe County. Later that year, the first passenger engine built in Ontario, named the Toronto, pulled the first train into the modest station located in the present staging ground, convenient to the route north. The community of Allandale was born. Barrie was pushing hard to be linked to the railway, so the oat, straw, and hay responded by naming the engine the Barrie. John Harvey of Allandale was the first conductor on the Northern Railway, photographed in 1860. This is the first Ontario Simcoe and Huron Railway ticket, Toronto to Barrie. Allandale's position on the line was increased with the shops and a roundhouse. The regional offices were located in Allandale. During this era, the new station was constructed on the site of the present building. It was visited by Sir John A. Macdonald when he arrived to holiday with Dalton McCarthy at his summer residence located at Lover's Creek. In 1868, Allandale Station became the first to have a restaurant. It was built with the emphasis on graciousness. A white picket fence surrounded colorful gardens and the well-kept lawn in front of the station. But growth was not without disaster. The Barrie Fire in 1875 destroyed over 20 businesses in one of the city's worst disasters. On June 5, 1890, the Barrie flood turned Clapperton Street into a chasm from Worsley Street to Kempenfelt Bay as the main sewer washed away. In April 10, 1894, the Allandale Station burned to the ground, and it was immediately announced that a fine station would be built on the site, one suitable to Allandale's prestigious position on the Grand Trunk Line. By the washout of 1896, which devastated the Allandale yards, the plans to build a new station were in process. The plans for the three-section station, designed to follow the curve of the bay, left no detail unattended. And in 1904, the plans complete, construction got underway in May. Completed 1 year later, it was labeled the flagship of the Grand Trunk Railway. The opening took place in June 1905. An account in the Northern Advance read as follows: "Nowhere along the line, perhaps, is there to be seen a more handsome, a more convenient station. Altogether, no prettier getting-off spot than Allandale is presented on the road." Allandale's popularity grew. Noted as one of the best eateries north of Toronto, travelers flocked to Allandale's hospitality on the shores of Kempenfelt Bay. The area grew in prominence, and 13 years later, the handsome Duke of Windsor stepped to the platform on a visit to the area, repeating the precedent that his namesake, the Prince of Wales, son of Queen Victoria, had accomplished in 1860. The towns of Barrie and Allandale had amalgamated in 1897. In 1922, the Grand Trunk Railway was taken over by the Canadian National Railways. Highway 11 made its way northward. Domination by the railroads faded. By 1955, when Allandale's Station Centennial was organized, travel by highway for goods and people had diminished the action at the station point. In 1957, Highway 400 was completed. Barrie was now linked by a superhighway to points west in Canada and north in the province. Located down the tracks, a short distance from Allandale Station, is the 1531 engine. This engine was donated by the Canadian National Railways in 1967 to the city of Barrie. It was dedicated, a memorial to William Huskett and John Harvey, who were the engineer and conductor on the first train to Allandale in 1853. The engine, left abandoned, was in danger of being scrapped unless suitable repairs were made. A group formed and became known as Friends of the 1531, who approached the Barrie City Council for help in funding the steam engine restoration. This engine is typical of locomotives used up to the end of the steam era. Built between 1907 and 1910 by the Montreal Locomotive Works, it was equipped for both passengers and freight service. It was a hand-fired 10-wheel engine. Because of the long association of this type of engine with Allandale and the Barrie area, this display has considerable historical value. As we know, railways were a major force in the development of Canada, and steam locomotives supplied the motive power for the first 100 years of our history as a nation. In the same way, railways were instrumental in opening up the Barrie area for settlement. Allandale, in its prime, was a prominent and busy center. It is easy to see the architectural beauty in this unique landmark. 4 Tuscan pillars form an entrance to the central building. They are flanked by wide divided windows. A balustrade made up of 5 pillars creates an ornamental effect above these windows. Attractive brackets support the eaves of the main and second floors of each building. A handsome feature is the semicircular waiting room facing southeast. The 6 double-hung windows display an interesting geometrical pattern in the upper section. The final touch in the design of the waiting room area is an unusual and handsome coronet effect surrounding the circular roof. And at the station today, the ticket facilities have moved to the red brick building at the north end. The regional yard office is gone, the communications equipment relocated, and the once busy staging area is all but abandoned. However, the Canadian National Railways, aware of the significance of stations such as Allandale, are making an effort to work with heritage groups across the province to preserve the romance of the rails. Centers such as Gravenhurst and Thunder Bay have brought new life to the depots in their communities. And Heritage Barrie and the Allandale Station Committee are endeavoring to promote positive uses for Allandale as a major attraction for the Barrie area by developing a transportation theme concept. Essentially, the committee would like to see the flagship of the Grand Trunk Railway restored for starters and put to such use that it would be accessible to the community as the people place it has been since it was established as a terminus 130 years ago. The Grand Hall lays vacant. We have been recognized as a transportation hub. Our heritage, our growth and development has been affected by all facets of transportation, the water, by rail, and the roads. Let us not allow the proud and aging Dowager Duchess, the once regal queen of the Grand Trunk line, to meet the fate of other neglected historical sites. Out of our past can grow our future.
Into the muskeg and into the rain, up to St. Lawrence all the way to Gaspé, swinging our hammers and drawing up hay, driving them in and tying them down, away to the bunkhouse and into the town. $1 a day and a place for my dead. A drink to the living, a toast to the dead. Oh, the song of the future has been sung. Oh, the battles have been won. On the mountain tops we stand. Oh, the world at our command. We have opened up the soil with our teardrops and our toil. Oh, there was a time in this fair land when the railroad did not run, when the wild, majestic mountains stood alone against the sun. Long before the white man and long before the wheel, when the green, dark forest was too silent to be real. When the green, dark forest was too silent to be real. And many other dead men. Too silent to be real.
Set up for the sake of a comfortable home. Too young to take control. Mother's little weapon for when father broke the rules. He never wanted her or me, he just wanted to be free. There's a risk and a twist, and all this from the girl you missed by minutes on the day you were hit. Set up every opportunity to make me like them. Set up, born into a world where I had no control. One set up leads to another. Two set up to lie to each other. One set up leads to another one. Two set up to lie to each other. And it's all been a frame. I've got to change my appearance and get rid of the name. They did it with mirrors. They did it without pain. I was set up and held up and stuffed in a cage. Don't get up and say it was some other mother. I'm sure enough it was you that planted me. Is there anyone out there who can change this atmosphere? And it's a setup. Every opportunity to make me like them. Set up. Born into a world where I had no control. One set up leads to another. Two set up to lie to each other. One set up leads to another one. Two set up to lie to each other. They did it with mirrors. have a number, so they gave me a name. Set up every opportunity to make me like them. Set up, born into a world where I had no control. One set up leads to another. Two set up to lie to each other. One set up leads to another one. Two set up to lie to each other. One set up leads to another one. Two set up to lie to each other. They did it with kindness.